welcome to Open House, where every conversation opens a new perspective. So we're excited today to have Ms. Theresa Pong, the founder and counseling director of the Relationship Room.
Thank you very much for this invitation.
Yes, thank you so much for coming here today. So let's start off with your journey. Right?
Definitely.
Let's start off with your journey.
Yeah, I always love to share this story with all my friends.
Why did you start the Relationship Room?
So like any Singaporean, I grew up in a very traditional Asian family where the definition of self-worth is very much pegged to your academics, your achievement. So the picture that I grew up with when in my childhood days is I must get a good degree, get a good job, with a very well-known organization. And of course, settle down, start a family and have this family image with many children. So what I did was, in my growing up years, this is how it defined my self-esteem, self-worth. And of course, when I graduated from school, I did what my parents, wanted me to do. I graduated with a degree. I went to a company, a relatively well-known organization, and I got a job there. But unfortunately, during that stage, it was in my, early 20s. I discovered that I wasn't enjoying the work that I'm doing. Yes, I may be in a great company, but it wasn't what I enjoyed. And importantly, when it comes to relationships, unfortunately, I didn't have the skill set to make positive and healthy connections. I was in and out of a number of relationships that left me disappointed, depressed, and heartbroken. Now, that was also the stage where I would say a very good friend of mine seeded the idea of counseling. And that was how I discovered counseling and started a 7-year journey of doing inner work and relearning how to make positive connections with people around me. So in that 7-year journey, I learned a lot and I saw the power of counseling. So at the end of the 7-year journey, that was when I met my husband. Yeah. We are married and we are very happily right now and we have a teenager. But it was also during that period of time that my husband actually suggested that, since I am passionate about counseling and I believe that, each of us is capable of having the relationship that you want. It's not by luck or by fate. Why not do a career switch? So I actually furthered my studies in counseling and did a career switch. But I also want to say that doing a career switch is not easy. I took actually a 60% pay cut to join a non-profit organization. And that's when I start from ground zero to build my skill set in counseling.
So what was the hardest thing that you had to do as a counselor during that period that you were trying to build your business?
All right. The hardest skill, I would say that even for new interns who are interested to be a counselor is the true art of empathy. We always say that it's easy to empathize, but it is never easy. Yeah. When we see a behavior, let's say the person may be throwing tantrums or, screaming at each other, we see that this person, wow, how can this person be demanding, be unreasonable? But to be empathetic, it means that we have to go behind this behavior. We want to find out what really drives all this behavior. And actually in all the couples that I see, what goes behind all this is actually pain, unprocessed pain.
Right.
Yes.
So, you face, like you mentioned, rejections and disappointments of your own. What was the hardest thing that you had to unlearn from your past relationships before you could move forward?
Your self-worth. It's hard to go there because every time you go there, if let's say you actually accept a rejection or you get disappointment, it's like you always think that something must be wrong with me. It's tough.
Right,
it's painful to go there. So many individuals, including me, we don't want to go to that area because you will feel the pain. So rather, we will always rationalize. We will start to blame the situation or blame other people, but not look at what is truly happening. So the hardest thing that I ever learned is to actually sit in the discomfort and learn how to process those very uncomfortable feelings. And at the end of the day, tell myself this narrative that, hey, it's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. It's not that I'm trying to run away the problem, but rather I see it as I did not have that necessary skill, or I did not have that knowledge to know what to do in the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Theresa, you are qualified to treat a variety of maybe psychological problems, right? But why did you choose to focus on relationships and marriage management?
All right. That goes behind the heartbeat of the relationship room. Our vision is we want to help couples and individuals to restore hope, reignite marriages, and rebuild connections. But if you look at these three areas, what it means by restoring hope, it's not just restoring hope in a relationships, but rather we want to help individuals and couples to see that even no matter how bleak the situation is, whether you're going through a breakup or the relationships are not going anywhere that you want, there's still light at the end of the tunnel. We hope to bring that hope to them. Of course, the next one, reignite marriages, is we want to help couples to actually discover that, maybe something is happening in this relationship. Can we work on it to unstuck what is, a blockage in these relationships? And that's how we help couples to reignite marriages.
Right.
And finally, rebuilding connections. And this rebuilding connections is not just about rebuilding connections with people around you, but rebuilding connections with the self.
Yourself, which is always the most important thing, isn't it?
Yes.
To love yourself.
And rebuilding the connections is actually, we talk about healing. Let's self-heal ourselves so that we can bring healing to the relationships.
Right.
And that's the heartbeat.
That's the heartbeat of the relationship. But would you say as a therapist, I mean, you run the relationship room and you've been a therapist for a number of years. Would you say there's still a stigma in seeking professional help, be it for your marriage, be it as an individual?
All right. Many years ago, John Gottman, a very well-known, renowned relationship psychologist, actually found that couples will take 6 years to realize that, hey, there's something wrong in the relationships and take action to it. And by the time they realize it, it's late. But in recent years, especially after COVID, post-pandemic, I realized that the stigma may no longer be there. I have seen couples, the moment they sense that, hey, we are repeatedly having quarrels or conflicts, they will actually seek help. And in fact, I have couples who are dating for about, let's say, 6 months, and they realize that, hey, something is happening to their relationships. Without any hesitation, they contacted us, to just want to work on their relationships. With the promoting of mental health, there is this trend that, like individuals, even especially ladies, will say that, hey, I want to be in a relationship where I can seek happiness and autonomy. Because of this trend, it also guided many individuals in their values. As long as if they feel like this is not what I want, they will make decisions.
Decision to which I think it's quite healthy as well, because if you know what you want at a certain age, whether you're young or you're a bit older, as long as you know what you want, I think it's good to move forward with it. So now, Theresa, let's talk about your expertise in fidelity in marriage, right? I think a lot of couples might be going through that out there as well. And I would say marriage is not easy. I'm sure you're married. I'm married as well. Through that, there can be a lot of cracks in some marriages, and certain painful situations can arise. And infidelity is one such thing, right?
I just wanted to add in is infidelity can hit any marriages. Some marriages, you see that on the surface, it look very happy. Then they discover infidelity. Just to share some statistics, at the relationship room, almost more than, I would say, 70% of our cases are related to some form of infidelity.
I see.
Yes.
So that's the question. And that's why, this episode, is so important for us, because we want to share with couples out there who might be struggling with it and who may not feel comfortable talking about it. At least, they can learn something from this. So what we wanted to also ask is, it being cheated on is a very painful process.
Definitely.
Right? It's very painful, actually, I think, for everyone involved, right? And what we want to understand is, why does it happen? Why is a partner prepared to put everything on the line, particularly if they have kids, particularly if they've been married for a long time, right? Why does infidelity happen?
Infidelity, unfortunately, is what I call the cancer of a marriage. So when we reach cancer, it's almost like a very chronic illness, a terminal illness that, it needs a lot of help. And sometimes marriages do break up because of infidelity. But having said that, infidelity, we also see as is a symptom of something deeper.
I see.
I mean, just like lung cancer, you don't get lung cancer overnight.
Yes.
It's like maybe years and years of smoking
Smoking.
or unhealthy lifestyle. Now, what do we want to do is we want to go behind the scene and find out what is happening in infidelity. Now, under the umbrella of infidelity, there are many kinds of what I call behavior or actions that will cause a rupture or injury to the relationship. This is how we define, the impact on a marriage. So under infidelity, there will be, let's say, pornography. There could be, let's say, just multiple dating or chatting with, like the opposite gender, through the dating apps. But the biggest one that we are concerned with and we are seeing that a lot is what we call the extramarital affair. Now, how an extramarital affair is different from the other forms of cheating or infidelity is that in this case, there is a connection with another person, unfortunately, outside the marriage. And this is the most difficult one that we always work with.
I see.
Yes.
So, another question just to move away from there is that like emotional cheating, they call it, right? Like where you don't have physical intimacy with that person, and maybe like what you mentioned earlier, they're just communicating online or chatting with the person. It could be someone from work, it could be someone with a group of friends. Does that also affect a marriage?
Definitely, that will also go under the infidelity. I just want to differentiate what you share. My concern here is: are you chatting or talking to the same person or different people? If you're talking to different people, I'll just take it as, okay, this is your coping mechanism, which you choose to just talk to multiple people about maybe something that's personal. All right? But what I'm concerned with is if you keep talking to the same person, because human beings are wired to connect and we connect on vulnerability. So when you start talking to the same person, especially if you bring your personal problems to that person, the bond established can be as strong as if there is a physical affair with the person.
In fact, it might be even stronger
because there's that strong connection here.
Yes, you're sharing your vulnerable moments and etc.
Yeah.
Now, based on your experience, and you've spoken to so many couples, right? At what stage does it tend to happen? Like you mentioned earlier, they tend to only realize after 6 years there's some cracks in the marriage.
All
right?
right.
And what stage does it usually tend to surface, or what kind of like triggers it?
Okay, infidelity, as I mentioned, all right, it can happen anytime. But especially when there is no emotional connection or maybe there's no safety in the relationship. So as long as, it's like there's no connection or there is, you feel like, I can't bring something to my spouse or my partner. I feel like every time I bring the issue to the other partner and it's not well received or invalidated, or I don't find the comfort that I want. Now, this is where the other partner will start to think about, okay, what are the coping mechanisms? So coping mechanism could be, some people may engage in, let's say, gaming or watching even Korean movies. Unfortunately, all right, especially when there are temptations and when it is easily available, there is a possibility that an infidelity may happen.
Right. So basically, at the end of the day, it's them just looking for a connection
Correct.
that they are not finding at home, right?
Correct.
I wanted to also ask here, when they do that, right, is there a sense of guilt that comes along?
All right.
Like in that moment when they're connecting with someone other than their rightful partner?
Sure. Contrary to what we believe, the person who committed, let's say, the infidelity, we normally call them the offending partner. All right. So in this case, I just want to say that the offending partner will go through a lot of guilt and shame. especially even more so aftermath of the discovery of the affair. Yeah, but remember, we are wired for connection. So it is a cycle, in a marriage. So suppose I come to you and say, hey, I need some comfort. I need some, like someone to share my thoughts. And if I don't get it, but if I go to somebody else and I get it. So this whole cycle of seeking connection and comfort got perpetuated.
Right.
So, it's almost like I find comfort. I find that, like maybe perhaps the good feeling that I am being heard, I'm being acknowledged in another relationship, that will increase the probability, the chances that I'll go back again and again.
Because that person makes them feel good and comforted and safe.
And more importantly now, this is the part that how come, they can't break that cycle.
That's right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because once I go into this relationship, you got to remember that's the affair partner. He or she also puts in a lot of efforts, emotions in this relationship.
Right. Yes.
And once that efforts, once the connection is established, it's another relationship. It's almost like a mini marriage.
There's so many parties involved.
Correct.
So earlier you mentioned that, infidelity tends to occur because that partner's looking for a connection outside of that marriage because they are not receiving it in the marriage. So what signs can a partner look out for to recognize those signs?
So one of the biggest signs that we always tell our couples is if you realize that in your relationship, if you keep experiencing similar repeated patterns of interaction, especially when it comes to conflict management, all right, this is a big sign that, hey, something is stuck and both of you are not able to come to a place of, let's say, reconciliation or even a closure on a topic that both of you are trying to communicate. Do not wait. That is a good time to just come in to see a counselor to check in what's happening in their relationship. And a lot of times it is actually related to how both of them has been interacting to each other, maybe in a not so functional way. And it creates a lot of blockages and disconnections.
I see. So here, there's always this myth, right? They share, it's quite a common thing. They say that, if you fight a lot means you love each other.
It's okay to fight a lot.
I don't know if that is true.
But what I'm interested is after fighting, can both of you come together to actually have that connection back? Or do you feel like every time I fight, like we have to give in just to make sure that there's peace and harmony back to the relationship?
So when they give in to each other, so isn't that like coming back to...
No, giving in is not what we are looking at. So for example, a typical cycle that we often see in couples is when there is a disconnection, maybe something is happening in the relationship. Maybe just an example, like maybe you see dirty plates in the sink, right?
It's the most smallest.
It's a very common problem. So generally in a relationship, there's always one person who always calls out to the other person. This person is what we call the pursuer. The pursuer is always the one that when I sense something is not right in the relationship, he or she will call it out. The withdrawer will be somebody who will want peace and harmony. So for example, all right, in relationship to that dirty plates in the sink, the pursuer will call you out, say, hey, how come there are still, like dirty plates in the sink? How come it's not clean? The withdrawer will take the posture that, just dirty plates in the sink. What's the big deal? I just, clean it out and keep quiet. And so can you imagine this whole cycle repeat over and over again?
Across different things.
Correct. So to the couple stating that we have settled the issue, but the problem is not settled because it will come to a day where the withdrawer will feel like, how come I'm the one who always
clean the plates? Yeah.
And then for the pursuer is, I've been telling the other partner about my issue. How come the other partner is not getting it? But what he or she didn't know is the other partner is just placating you, just giving in.
Right.
So this is what we call a dysfunctional, interactional cycle.
Right. And what should they then do? Then that's when they look for a counselor?
If they feel like, hey, how come we keep going into this cycle? I got to raise my voice, and the other partner feels I have to just keep quiet and just placate you. I think both of them should come together and say that and recognize that, hey, this is not working. We should seek a counselor for help to help us get unstuck and see what's happening in this relationship. And a lot of times this cycle happens due to our past experiences. It may be childhood experiences, or it could be some event that happens in the relationship. That after it happens, the cycle starts repeating on its own.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, dealing with infidelity is a very highly emotional situation.
Correct.
There's a third party, there's a person who's cheating on their partner. So there's many different emotions involved. And of course, you have the children as well.
Definitely.
So how do you help the couples and spouses deal with this situation, especially if there are children involved? And what should their first steps be?
Maybe first, let me explain the process of working with couples who are recovering from infidelity. So there are basically 3 stages. Now, the first stage normally happens almost immediately, or maybe a few months after the discovery of the affair or the infidelity. Now, this is what I call a very emotional stage, where emotions between the offending partner and the injured partner can be running very high, and the feelings can be very raw. So the first stage is I need to help couples to actually stabilize their emotions. And whenever they feel triggers are happening in their relationship, especially to the injured partner, I will have to guide them, teach them how to turn to each other to seek comfort. Right. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that you sweep everything under the carpet. Yeah. But at least we have to stabilize this particular stage. Now, in this stage, many things could happen. And that is the stage where we always tell couples, don't make any rash decision. Don't just go straight to the divorce lawyer and say, hey, I want a divorce. Give each other the space, because this is also the stage where we recognize that because due to triggers and anxiety, especially the injured partner will go into a coping mechanism, what we call interrogation. So every time the offending partner comes back, even though the offending partner says, hey, I want to move forward, I want to work things out. But because of certain triggers, the injured partner will end up interrogating, asking him or her for questions. And that what happens is push the offending partner even further away from the relationship or the marriage. So this is where I also work with the couples, how to actually help each other to get grounded in the emotions and how to cope with all these triggers. So this is the first stage. And also this is also the stage where we will also tell the couples that, especially if they are parents, just tell the kids that daddy, mommy is going through something tough, all right? And we are just working on it.
Right.
But don't triangulate the children into the picture. Because depending on the age, we don't know whether do they really understand what is happening. And plus children, no matter how big they are, be it preschoolers or teenagers, they don't like to hear each parent bad-mouthing each other.
Of course, yeah.
They don't feel good.
Yeah.
So what we tell them is, leave the children out, but always assure them that daddy, mommy, no matter what happens, still love you.
So that's the challenge, especially
Correct.
when you have children.
So I was talking about the first stage. Now, when the emotions kind of stabilize, I go to the second stage. That is revisit the old marriage or the old relationship. Now, any relationship before the affair, unfortunately, is dead. So we need to revisit the old relationship or the old marriage to find out what is happening.
Right. So this is before the affair. That means the marriage before the affair is dead.
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
Correct.
Right.
Because something is actually perpetuating in that relationship that actually leads to the infidelity. So we want to revisit, and going there can also create a lot of emotions. We also hope to move them to a place of reconciliation and then taking ownership of how each of them has contributed to the infidelity so that they can seek forgiveness from each other.
Right.
And forgiveness is not just, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do this. It doesn't work. And forgiveness have to come from the heart.
Right.
Yes.
And speaking of forgiveness, I think it's a big part of helping to rebuild that trust in their relationship again. So I wanted to ask, is it an essential part? Because, their spouse who's the sort of like a victim, I would say, in the situation, they may feel like, how do I forgive you, right? Like, this is not a case where I feel, I don't know, I may be wrong. You can't forgive and forget at the same time,
It's
right?
not easy.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
why forgiveness is a process that we start in the stage 2 of our therapy. So it's not a final station. It is a continuous process. And this process can be long. You see, for them to reach full forgiveness, they need to know not just the offending partner, but also the injured partner, how each of them contribute to each other in terms of the conflict. I also want to say that the offending partner, he or she is also not going through a good time. He or she is also going through a lot of grief and loss and a lot of guilt and shame. And perhaps he or she also have unforgiveness in this relationship, which resulted in him or her, seeking comfort elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very interesting what you mentioned earlier, that it's important in the first stage to find out, or second stage to find out what each of them have contributed to that marriage for this to have happened. Very often, I think as a society, we tend to think of like, oh, it's just the offending partner's fault. It's that person's fault. That person has to, take responsibility for it. So in this situation, is there any one person who takes responsibility?
Two persons have to take responsibility. Because I work with couples, I only focus on the couple itself.
Right.
Yes.
Both the offending partner and the
injured partner.
Right.
So both have to take the responsibility.
So there's no blame game here.
But to reach there is not going to be easy. Yeah. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
So for example, I work with a particular couple. Unfortunately, the wife discovered that the husband is having an affair with his colleague. But as we delve deeper into the relationship, it took us quite a while when the husband felt safe and said that, do you know that during that period of time, I felt so lonely because she was so busy with the newborn that whatever conflicts, whatever needs that she asked for is all actually, related to the newborn. It's almost like the moment the baby is born, his position in the relationship has been displaced. The baby becomes the number one. So in this case, both have to take the responsibility. The offending partner have to say that, yes, instead of addressing the issue with you, I took it outside to another relationship.
Right.
And for the wife to also take the responsibility to say, yes, during that period of time, I have neglected you. I've taken for granted that you'll be there for me.
But from an outside perspective, especially in this scenario, for example, the wife is basically taking care of their child.
Correct.
Right? It's a newborn. So from my perspective, I feel like it's quite unfair for the wife as well, because it's not like she's out gallivanting and having fun.
Definitely, I agree with that. I mean, the wife is working
hard to take care of their child together. If it was for me in that situation, I'll be like, what? I'm here taking care of my newborn and this is happening. What's going on? Right?
That's why it's not so simple. The forgiveness process is never simple. Because if we were to delve deeper, I will ask questions like, okay, when she asks you for needs, how does she sound?
Right.
How does she ask for it? And when you try to tell her, all right, how are you experiencing? How do you feel about what's happening at home? So I'm hoping that through all this, repeated asking questions, helping them to create that awareness about what has happened, you bring them to a place of awareness. Okay, so this is how we contribute to each other in this relationship.
It sounds like communication is such a big part of a marriage, be it when they come and see you or be it when they communicate with themselves. So having said that, do you think all marriages or all couples who come to you have the potential for recovery?
All have a potential to recover. I also wanted to add, yes, while communication is important, but actually behind the communication is, can we actually attune or meet each other needs. So for example, the example I gave, one of the needs of the wife, all right, is actually equal partnership. I'm hoping that while I'm taking care of the child, you can also help to look after the child.
Right, yeah.
But whereas for the husband, maybe his needs is companionship. I just need, like to feel like
I'm also here.
Yeah, I'm important as well.
And is that a common thing with couples who've just had a newborn?
It is one of the major issues that we have.
Right,
Yes.
I see. So the husbands tend to feel
neglected. I feel like suddenly my position has been displaced by a newborn.
A newborn. It's like
Correct.
the baby has taken over the house, so that's a literal term.
Yes.
Right.
The second stage is, we talk about forgiveness. After the forgiveness, now this is the part that I will work with the couples to seek clarity. So, do you want to continue with this marriage? This is the final decision here. So, if let's say the couple say, yes, we want to continue with the marriage. So, this is where we talk about restructuring your communication connections so that they can actually communicate their needs in a better, more functional, more, I'll call it, loving way. But if they say, hey, Theresa, it's too much pain. I don't want to go there anymore. And I think I have made decision to move on. I'm hoping that at least I still can work with them in the final stage to grieve over the lost marriage. Yes.
Right.
So that we do not want to have a divorce that's so acrimonious at the end of the day.
You teach them how to end that marriage in a healthy way.
Correct.
Right. Now, what do you think couples should consider before they even enter into parenthood? So that, because a child is a lot of responsibility,
I would
right?
say that the belief is a myth. And a lot of times in the situations I see, it worsens the marriage. Because you have unresolved issues that you have not resolved. Now, with the children, it brings more stress. It adds more tension to the relationships, and it will actually worsen the relationship between the two partners. So back to the question is that what are the things to look out for, before deciding parenthood is for you? First of all, have a conversation with each other. Are we ready for a child? Or are we having a child because everybody is having it? Or are we having the child, a baby, because we want it, we desire for it, and we are prepared to make sacrifices or put in the efforts to be parents. Parenthood is no joke. I must say that.
Of course, yeah. So marriage is work, parenthood is work, and they mentally sort of have to prepare themselves before they enter one, right? I would say this is another question for people who do end up getting divorced, for example, where they've decided, like what you mentioned, okay, I want to end my marriage, right? How long should they wait before they enter into another relationship?
I don't have a numbers for you for this. It's very subjective because it's all talking about the readiness. Right? Do I still hold grievances? Am I still repeating whatever I do in the previous relationship, in my current, let's say, relationships or with my friends around me? So if you realize that I'm still, having a lot of baggages, or if I feel like I'm still doing the same thing over and over again, in my friendships, then I would say, take a break. Work on yourself, have the inner work. And when you feel like, hey, I don't feel any more grievances, or when I feel like I'm more confident to establish, let's say, positive connections with just friends, like platonic friends, nothing romantic, then it will be time for you to think about maybe you're ready for the next stage to explore something more romantic or more deeper.
So take care of yourself first, because after coming off from a divorce, it can be a challenging situation, right?
Correct.
So it's self-awareness, self-love, right?
Yes, correct.
Right. Okay. So now moving on to one of our favorite topics here in Singapore is that, a lot of couples, before they get married, the way we propose here in Singapore is, hey, do you want to get a BTO? which is a very common thing, right? Which is quite different from maybe other parts of the world.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah. Where we don't start off with a house first, right?
Correct.
They really consider the process. Do you actually think that sort of adds on some pressure to the couple because, you are starting off with something that's financially going to, maybe not drain them, but maybe, it is a financial consideration and then they have to wait till, their house is sorted and stuff.
You started off a very interesting topic. I mean, there were media, there were newspapers talking about how it impacts on the divorce rate.
Yes, recently there was a study done as well. Yeah.
Yes. Of course, on one hand, we know logistically, all right, it takes about 3 to 5 years to wait for a house, all right. Of course, it makes sense that, maybe in the first year of university, let's go and register for a BTO. By the time we graduate, we have the house ready for us. But having said that, I also want to say that, this is my personal, opinion. Don't be influenced because you have to wait for a house or a flat. All right. Be sure that you're ready because marriage is a lifelong commitment and you don't want to make a decision, so easily. So think carefully whether are you ready for this decision. But I have couples who try to make it work by, instead of being pressured, to go into the BTO market, what they do is, let's not let that be the deciding factor. Let's make sure that we really are sure about getting married. And suppose, by the time we decide that we are ready for marriage, what they could do is, some of them explore options like, maybe let's rent a room first. It's like, I'm sure some of your family members are not happy if, let's say, they have empty houses or rooms just to let you stay with them for a while. And then, like during that period of time, save money and then so that you can explore other housing, more permanent housing options.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, if they apply for a BTO when they're in university, they're quite young, right? And by the time they get to the end of that, as a couple, they change, but also as individuals, they change, right?
Right.
So what should young couples look out for to even know that they are ready for marriage?
Okay. Now, from the relationship point of view, that's where I'm coming from, all right? You have to ask yourself, are there things that is negotiable or non-negotiable in this marriage or in this relationship, all right? And if it's non-negotiable, then can we talk about it? So for example, one big item that I always see that's non-negotiable is religion. I know this is a very sensitive issue.
Sure.
So for example, all right, if one partner is of religion A, the other partner is religion B, are we able to say that, when we come into a marriage, we are okay to practice differently from each other? But if we come from a religion that says that, hey, two of you must practice the same religion or the same faith, then you have to ask yourself, can you carry on in a marriage with these differences? Is this something that's negotiable or non-negotiable?
So speaking of different religions, right, Theresa, interracial marriages are on the rise or have always been in the rise in Singapore. I'm in an interracial marriage myself. So, we do have, of course, there are going to be cultural differences, religious differences, etc., right? So in that sense, how do you help interracial couples cope with the differences that they come with?
Okay. So I have one couple knows that especially one of the spouse, she comes from a country where they have lots of festivals, celebrations throughout the year. And she hopes that, the other partner will actually join her in all these celebrations. But unfortunately, the other spouse also has certain number of festivals and celebrations in his country as well. And plus, because both of them are professionals in Singapore, they have limited leave. So they can't be like traveling to their own respective countries to celebrate. But we try to come to the middle ground and ask, what are their needs? Why do they value, this, like traveling to the different countries for the celebrations? When they realize that the needs is, we want to celebrate all these important moments with someone important. And that is where actually they embrace each other and somehow on their own. I mean, I don't need to give them the solutions. They were able to come up with solutions. We were able to work out like which are the major celebrations that we want to be present so that they will know how to plan their leave for the year.
I see. So it's sort of like you guide them towards that solution, right?
Yes.
Now, another question that I wanted to actually ask is, today's couples or, all of us today, we live in a very digital world, right? Everything that we do, we put it online, right? Almost, right? And, while that is great because we share our moments with loved ones as well, where we can't see them every day or talk to them every day. But on the other end, we get this situation where couples may start comparing themselves with others they see online. For example, how come they travel to such a nice place? How come her ring is bigger than mine? How come their house is prettier than mine? And things like that.
No, whatever you see on the Instagram, for example, the huge diamond ring that you say, or going to expensive holidays. Are both of you able to have the financial means to do that? Because we don't want our couples to end up doing things to just, make them look good on social media and they get into debts. And importantly is does doing all these things really help in the relationship? Because we don't want you to start on a marriage in debt. Because there'll be a lot of costs involved as you start to build a marriage. And the other thing that I always tell couples is the day that when both of you are throwing pots and pans at each other, your friends or your family members who gave you all the wonderful ideas, they are not there to help you.
That's right. I completely agree with you. I can attest to that. Right,
Yeah. But I know because of the social media, the pressure is even heavier on, Singaporeans these days.
That's right. Because sometimes in-laws will be like, you should raise your children this way, or you should do this. Why are you doing that? Don't do that. Why is your house so small? They have a lot of opinions.
Yes.
So what advice would you give for couples to take the good from their families or even friends and leave the bad behind?
I would say that, friends and even, our in-laws, they have good intention. And that's why they always like to give advice. But always remember that when both of you decide to come together to start a marriage, it's between the both of you. And the both of you should put, each other in the priority. So this is where we actually also help couples to build what I call a healthy and open boundary. Right? It's not a rigid boundary as in anything outside this marriage, we'll all say no. But rather an open boundary where, okay, if the advice sounds good and both of us are comfortable with it, why not let's try? But if it's too intrusive or like it really, disrupts our relationship, then prepare to say no. Yes, sometimes, you might be afraid that, will my in-laws get upset with you? But we have to also, be mindful that, but it is affecting our marriage too much. We need to have the courage to say no.
Right.
Yeah. But of course, you can say in a more amicable way.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So before I let you go, but thank you so much for all your insights today. I just wanted to ask, how did you find out that your husband was the right person for you? What was your insight into it?
Surprisingly, I knew him for only 6 months as a friend before we decide to, get into something that's more committed. And then, it's like within 2 months, he proposed to me. I think back to the question, how do I know whether is he the one? All right, I think let's go back to earlier on when I shared with you, like how did I get to know about counseling and, in the early years. One of the relationships that I went into actually ended up in a divorce. So this is actually my second marriage. Yeah. And I actually asked my husband, then I say, hey, do your parents actually mind a divorcee as their daughter-in-law? And he said something. He said, I don't need to tell them because I want you to hold your head high in every Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot of comfort. It's like I can see that he dared to stand out to make decision in a relationship. And that's why I talk about, having that open boundary, whether can we say a no or a yes confidently to protect the relationship.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us, Theresa. So before we wrap up, do you want to share any words of wisdom or advice for couples out there?
All right. I think one of the advice that I want to share with couples is, all right, if you find yourself quarreling or having disputes repeatedly in a similar manner, don't hesitate. Seek help from a professional, maybe a counselor or a psychologist. Don't wait till too late, because by the time you'll be too late to work on the relationship, or even if both of you decide to work, you'll be very painful and you'll take a longer time to recover.
Right. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
your time today. Now, and thank you everyone for watching. Remember that you are never alone, no matter how you feel. Always seek professional help, like what Theresa has shared. And Theresa is with the Relationship Room. So until next time, take care. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a comment or subscribe.